Hey, this is Basketball Talk 77, and today's video is my playoff predictions for the conference finals. I've already done playoff predictions for the first and second round, in which I went 7 for 8 and 3 for 4, so if you want to check those out, I'll leave comments on the video that have those links. Anyway, I'm hoping to go 2 for 2 for these conference finals predictions, and I'd just like to remind you that my finals predictions will come out soon whenever the finals matchup is verified. Anyway, let's get with our first prediction, which is the Eastern Conference Finals, and to decide who comes out of the East this year, which is Bucks-Hawks. Now, I think this will be a relatively easy series. I think it will be Bucks in 6. Before the playoffs, if I saw this matchup, I might have said Bucks in 5 or even in 4, but considering how the Hawks have been playing in the playoffs so far to get to the conference finals, it's obvious that they are better than the 5th seed. And I think one of the major reasons that this may be true is that we have to remember that their record, which is the 5th seed, is taken from 2 different stories. The story in the beginning of the season where they were 14-20 and were in no way, even in the playoffs, in the second half of the season where they were amazing. If you take just the second half of the season, the team they are now, then it's obvious that they are much better than their record represents. So maybe they deserve to be more of a 3rd or even 2nd seed, but because of their terrible start, they didn't get that. Anyway, it still is going to be a pretty easy series for the Bucks, I think, in 6. Obviously not super easy, but not a Game 7 scenario. Because the Bucks simply have more talent and they've got great defenders at the positions the Hawks' best offensive players play at. For example, Trae Young, the point guard, is going to be guarded by Jrue Holiday, a great defender, and so I don't think that Jrue Holiday is going to be able to fully lock Trae Young up. However, he's going to be able to at least lower the efficiency of Trae Young or lower the amount of points he can score in a game. Then you also have players like John Collins, but he's at the power forward position. And then there's Giannis Antetokounmpo, who I think will be a capable defender against John Collins. Now, if John Collins goes more to try to do things on the outside, then he might have an easier time. However, that takes a lot away from the Hawks in terms of their offense, as John Collins is just a spot-up shooter. And then they also have Kevin Huerter, who showed himself to be a very capable offensive player in Game 7. And even if he keeps this up, he will still have to be guarded by Chris Middleton. So that is yet another good defender at the Hawks' best position. So all in all, the Bucks are a great defensive team, and the Hawks will be able to score less. But you can't really say the same for the Hawks. They are not a very good defensive team. Obviously better than they were at the beginning of the season, which was one of the reasons they were so terrible. But they still aren't as good at as good at defense. And, John Collins, who has been a good defender but not a great defender, is going to have to guard Giannis Antetokounmpo, and that's going to be a matchup that the Bucks may be able to exploit. And of course, Jrue Holiday on Trae Young. Trae Young is a terrible defender, and Jrue Holiday is really going to be able to exploit that matchup. And so, Jrue Holiday hasn't been very good so far in the series or that the Bucks have been playing in, but I still think that given the opportunity of being guarded by Trae Young, he'll do well. So anyway, that's the reason I'd say Bucks in 6. The Bucks have good defenders to stop the Hawks' best offensive players, and the Hawks cannot do the same for the Bucks' best offensive players. Anyway, let's move on to our next matchup. The next conference finals matchup is Suns-Clippers. Now, this is yet another very important series, and I think it's probably another hard one to predict as well. Every round has had a hard one to predict, at least in my mind. First it was Suns-Lakers, then it was Clippers-Jazz, and now it's Clippers-Suns, because the main thing that makes it hard to predict for this series is injuries, or injuries plus code complications. Obviously, Chris Paul got the virus, and so he will not be playing in this series. And Kawhi Leonard has been injured. So that means that the two best players on the Suns and the Clippers are going to be out for this series. So that means that it's hard to predict because injuries, we don't know when these players are going to come back, how good they're going to come back, if they come back, or how well the other players are going to play without them. So my tentative prediction is Clippers in 6, and the reason I predict for this is because we have had a sample size of the Clippers without Kawhi Leonard. We have not yet seen the Suns play without Chris Paul. We have seen the Clippers play without Kawhi Leonard. Editor's note, we have now seen the Suns play without Chris Paul because the Suns-Clippers series has started, and we have seen them play relatively well. Now, I'm still not going to change my series prediction. However, I will say that this video, or at least the recording for this Suns-Clippers prediction, was made before any of these series started, but because the Sixers had to take forever to lose in 7 games to the Hawks, I was not able to actually submit this video of my conference finals predictions until later. So that is the reason that what I'm saying is a little bit inaccurate. Anyway, continue and enjoy the video. That was Game 5 and Game 6. In those 2 games, not only did they win both times, Paul George dominated. So this is obviously a much better playoffs than it was for Paul George in 2020. However, whether he's going to be able to keep up this performance is questionable. However, because we've seen him have these amazing games in the playoffs as the best player on the court, I have faith that he's going to be able to do it again. So, that's why I have a Clippers in 6. Not to mention the fact that I think that the Suns really need Chris Paul to win, because as we've seen, Chris Paul makes every team he's on a lot better, and I think he's one of the more underrated players in the league in terms of how good he is, especially on offense and defense. Especially on offense and defense. What am I talking about? Especially when playing. That's what I mean. Anyway, this means that although many people may think that the Suns will be able to be good without him, I'm not so sure, because it may be the LeBron effect, where LeBron was such a center, such the nucleus of his teams that they couldn't possibly do anything without him. And that's what happened in the 2018-19 Cavs after he left. They just couldn't do anything, and they were a really terrible team. It's also probably important to talk about both teams' rosters, because just the best players doesn't really get you the full picture for the teams. Obviously, there are plenty of other players. There's Deandre Ayton, and he will be matching up against, I think, Marcus Smart, and that's going to be possibly advantageous for the Suns, because DeAndre Ayton may be able to dominate in the post. However, again, we have not really seen DeAndre Ayton play that much without without Chris Paul, and so we don't know if he's going to be as good as he's been before. However, so far in these playoffs, he's had great games. He's been a great center, and I imagine that he will be one of the weak spots for the Clippers. And all in all, if there's any weakness that the Clippers have, it's going to be their center position. I don't think Serge Ibaka's playing. It's probably because of injury, but that was a major hit. That was a major problem for them. I thought that when they acquired Serge Ibaka, that was one of their most important signings, because that was their big problem, or one of their big problems, the year before. because Zubac really isn't capable of defending the NBA's premier centers. So obviously DeAndre Ayton isn't a premier center, but they still are going to have trouble defending him. Anyway, there are plenty of other small forward, power forward players like Cameron Payne, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, Mikal Bridges. Technically, Cameron Payne is a point guard, but there are lots of players that are starting and on the bench. They're also going to contribute to the offense, but none of them are big enough force that they will be able to help Devin Booker beat the Clippers. The Clippers are a great defensive team, not to mention that they are an even better offensive team than the Suns. They've got one of the best three-point shooting. They are the best three-point shooting team in the league, or almost the best, but probably behind the Jazz. Because the entire team is shooting, I think, like 40% on average, which is insane. And that's their role players that are shooting that. And so not only will they be able to defend the Suns really well, they'll be able to shoot lights out. So all in all, even if you take into account the whole roster, I think that the Clippers are going to win. Obviously, the biggest reason is that Paul George is going to be able to guard Devin Booker. And obviously, you're not going to be able to stop Devin Booker fully, but even making him less efficient or taking away at least some of his points is going to help you win in that series, because he's one of the only consistent scorers that is going to score a lot. So, and Paul George is a good defender, so that means that he'll be able to at least help contain Devin Booker. Anyway, that's the reason I say Clippers in 6. That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, then give it a like and subscribe to see more content like this, and turn on notifications so that you know when the next video is posted, and finals video coming out soon, by the way. Anyway, I will be having more plans, and I'll have an announcement in my finals video about more things that I'll be doing with the channel and other channels. So anyway, like, subscribe, and see you next time.